I want to introduce to you Michael and Gregor from Aram Sings that are going to talk to you about their work on Stranger Things and on The Mist.
Correct.
Right? Cool. So I leave you with them, that are the interesting people, not me. Bye.
Go for it, dude.
So, how many people know who Aaron Sims is? Awesome. It's something, Aaron and I go back now probably 13 years. We worked together at Stan Winston's, where Aaron learned his process of going from pencil into the digital world. And during his first project was AI with Steven, and he really transferred over. He rode the first wave, designing from pencil into the digital world. And when Steven Spielberg saw his designs for AI, he said, that's all I want to see now. And in 2005, Aaron went out on his own and started Aaron Sims Creative, where he was a design company. And over the last 2 or 3 years, we have transformed from a design company into a design visual effects company. And as of today, we had to build a pipeline, and how are we going to do that being efficient? And Nuke Studio was perfect for our studio because it kept us creative. We were able to switch things out in the timeline, but keep on the creative genes, the creative juices going, where we're able to build the designs and then switch them out along in the timeline into the final visual effects.
To help them understand better what we do, why don't we play the first bit of our reel?
Let's rock it.
Gear up, guys.
So that's an overview of both our design work and some of our visual effects. And then we have a little bit more specific breakdown that really covers our sketch-to-screen process. And this kind of is just an overview of our film history. As you can see, we've worked on quite a few awesome projects. And the next bit will be a little bit in-depth on the sketch-to-screen process, covering Stranger Things in particular.
Sims Creative, a concept design and visual effects studio which has brought to life some of the most iconic film and television creatures of our generation. ASC's sketch-to-screen workflow is unrivaled in its ability to seamlessly integrate elite concept design, pre-visualization, and cutting-edge visual effects to develop extraordinary creatures and worlds from script page to screen debut. Our process examines the depths of a character, its role within the story, in the realization of look, feel, and emotion that are essential to the creation of memorable cinema creatures. Bringing these characters to life involves a series of carefully constructed digital assets that build upon meticulous designs, 3D models, and motion studies, pivotal to creating a lifelike life form. Beyond the character, we are able to provide a cohesive glimpse into the conceptual world, and before a single frame is ever shot, collaborating with costume designers to develop character wardrobe, production designers in the creation of props and weapons, and pivotal key scenes brought to life through storyboards and animatics. Our immersive sketch-to-screen workflow and award-winning design team combines the best of design and visual effects to transform your wildest dreams and nightmares into reality.
All right.
So with our sketch-to-screen process, we are fortunate enough to start early on with the directors and writers. We are collaborating with them early on, and for Stranger Things, they came to us with one page of saying what the creature, what the feeling of the creature was. There wasn't really anything specific that they were sure about. They just knew they wanted it to be a biped. So we do this shotgun approach where we have a pool of artists, and we said, you know, biped, no face, let's go. And our first pass was just a shotgun of images of what they wanted to, kind of what we thought they would kind of want to go for.
We also dig up inspiration as we're digging into stuff to make it realistic. So, for example, these are textures that we used for developing the Demogorgon. Up there in the left-hand corner, that's the inside of a snapping turtle's mouth. So, yeah, they're kind of scary.
And in that process, what was interesting, we knew now the Duffers were like, we wanted a faceless creature, but when it opened up, we needed to see teeth. And as it showed, the inspiration was the snapping turtle. We started with sketches and moved on from there. We go to a finishing stage. And then once we hit that, we hit the environments. We do key scenes for the show. And where Nuke Studio comes into play, we start filling our timeline of what the script is with our key scenes.
Yeah, our key screens and our storyboards. We keep multiple tracks running at all time. We have versions of our history. This kind of brings me to one of the key features that's very important to us at ASC about Nuke Studio, and that is the way it handles versions. It's very unique to any nonlinear editor. The fact that you can have in one clip a complete history of your shots, all the way from the original drawings, all the way up into pre-visualization and all that stuff. Being able to have that as a immediate history allows you to explore and go back and see what was working in shots before that you might have lost as you moved forward.
And building on that, with my producer's hat, how do you stay efficient in Los Angeles in this time and day with all the incentives all over from Canada to Europe? How in Los Angeles do we stay efficient? Nuke Studio allows us to be efficient where an I/O department could have 5 or 6 people. We're able to use Nuke Studio integrated with Shotgun, where once we pull the editorial in, we are able to fill Shotgun with our shot length. It makes our Nuke scripts. It helps us with Maya. It really...
Yeah, it basically, in a matter of seconds from getting our EDL in, we can reconform the spot, get Nuke scripts with the correct color space, everything set up for our compositors in minutes. So if we have 200 shots, being able to distribute that to our compositors and making sure that it's all right is an amazing advantage. You know, with Nuke Studio, it's one of those applications until you have it in-house, and you hear me saying it on the thing, you don't understand why you need it. But it is such a central piece of code that allows us to, you know, script our timelines, be able to talk to Shotgun. In fact, you know, that's one of the key things is the way it talks to Shotguns and fills out all the details for all our artists. They know what the frame lengths of the shots, what the ins and outs of shots are for. So Nuke Studio has been very beneficial in that.
And as you see, our animation test, once again, before we're moving forward, Nuke Studio allows us to replace each version as we move along with the production. And during our sketch-to-screen process, it is really more a collaboration with the director because we are so early on working with the production that it's a collaboration that we know the beat and the pulse of what the film is going to be.
All right.
Click through.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on this scene, this is actually a really interesting part for Stranger Things. Originally for Stranger Things, they wanted to keep everything in the 80s style feel of a guy in a suit. And for this scene, they came to us and said, hey, we really need the Demogorgon to be able to be coming through the wall. But they had cut a rectangle into the wall and had a guy in a suit coming through, right? And they said, hey, Aaron, can you actually, you know, have the wall stretch? We want it pulling, coming from the upside down world, coming into the present world. And we looked at the footage and we were like, that we're not going to be able to do it with a guy in a suit. Since we designed it already, we had the asset 70% done. And we were able to just turn around. Aaron said, you know what, I want to do it full CG. We'll show them how it's going to be. We rendered it out, presented it to them, and they were like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's exactly what I want. And in that process, that went from us doing 3 shots in visual effects to roughly about 150, 175 shots for the show, because there were certain things that you just couldn't do in a practical suit that we had to do in CG.
All right, so this is Stephen King's The Mist. This is an example of where we start. For example, this sequence was originally shot. It was designed to be a practical sequence with some people on horses. They were the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Well, due to budgetary constraints, time, and all that sort of stuff, the costumes weren't necessarily very well designed, and they ended up looking a little bit like a high school play when they rode up. So they came to us and said, hey.
Yeah, and adding to that, what was really interesting was, as he said, they just thought dressing these people up would make it interesting. And what they found after shooting it was that the characters just came out and they said action, and they just walked out and just stood there. So since we designed in our sketch-to-screen process, since we designed early on in the show, they felt this scene was unique to Aaron Sims' creative, and they said, you know, we don't like what we shot, we need to redesign it. And as in a TV schedule, you realize this sequence was 4.5-week turnaround time.
Yeah, initially they came to us and said, hey, can you put new helmets on them? Can you do this? And Aaron was very he insisted that we just replace everything in 3D to make it, as good as it could possibly be.
As dynamic as possible.
You know, it made a few of us worried with the 4.5-week schedule, but the guys did an amazing job. Just keep rolling this. You'll kind of see a breakdown of how we developed these characters. So these are some turntables of the 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse, all rendered in V-Ray. You can go on to the next one.
And as you're watching this footage, once again, the importance of this and the timeline that we had, we were doing quick turnarounds, designs, PREVIZ, and then doing the visual effects in a 4.5-week turnaround. We had 15 shots that had to be put out in 4.5 weeks to meet the deadline of a television production. And once again, they weren't happy with the original shooting, so we designed from sketch all the way to the final output, which we call sketch to screen.
All right, and let's go to the next one here. This is a kind of a breakdown of how the shot turned out. And we went ahead. This is not the actual shot. This is something we did so we could show off our models. Unfortunately, that wide shot didn't really get to show off all the detail work. So the guys back at the shop, Matt knocked this together to kind of highlight all the awesome work they did. And this is kind of layers that we use to composite the whole thing, all in Nuke, of course.
And if we pause on that for a second, one of the advantages of Nuke Studio with the turnaround was, once again, we put this together, and then once again, you have the approval process through the network, right? Network on this shot was really interesting, was they felt one of the legs you could not see properly, it wasn't angled right, and they wanted to make sure you saw all 4 legs of the horse. Once again, us staying efficient, on budget, and on time, Nuke Studio allows us to do the iterations and turnaround quite fast and getting it to the client with a quick turnaround. Once again, in Los Angeles, we're fighting our incentives. We're trying to stay lean and efficient. And Nuke Studio allows us, in our studio, we run on a 30-man team. That's designers and visual effects. We really need to be efficient. So this allows our editor to ingest the footage, timeline it, put it in, and populate shotgun with one person, where I know if we were at a larger studio, we'd probably have 5 or 6. And inevitably, and we have in the past, we've lost shows because we're in Los Angeles and we're not the incentive Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal. So once again, how do you, with my producer hat on, how do you stay efficient? You start filling in tools that you can use that takes 3 or 4 jobs, and you allow it to do one person.
Cool. Okay, so besides the 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse shop, let's just let these just all run. We did a series of almost what I would call invisible effects, like this spider, where, for example, this spider was they had a real spider on set, but getting a spider to do what you want on cue is a bit difficult. Spider wrangling's a little bit difficult. So we just kind of we basically replaced all these spiders in the sequence, and then sometimes, as we'll go through and show you some of the different layers. Reflection passes, kind of shows you how the whole thing comes together. And this just runs through a few of the shots that we did. Some of the shots, like this one, that's a bunch of hot glue up there in the corner. And so instead of using hot glue, they needed us to replace webs. This was done inside Nuke Studio very quickly, and in Nuke. Baby spiders, more Nuke magic. We've got some render passes that we did for these guys coming up, kind of show you. We got them in close-up so you can kind of see their creepy crawly factor. This sequence was all rendered in Redshift. And turned out pretty neat. So if you have any questions about our process, feel free to ask. Michael, you have anything else to say?
Any questions? No, one of the things I just want to add, well, I do.
Yeah. Michael always has something else to say.
No, one of the unique things at Aaron Sims Creative is that we have a collaboration. And since we start so early on with the directors, we build these relationships that, from my experience, this year's 23 years doing visual effects, it's nice to actually have a say on how things look and how things feel for a film. Because normally on the visual effects side, they usually take the designs, they do their production. When they start filming, they pull the visual effects supervisor in, and they bring a still, right? And they go to the visual effects house, hey, we need you to build this, right? And they have to redo it. And in our unique sketch-to-screen process, since we are designing in ZBRUSH and we do paint overs, we're usually, when a design is finished, we're usually about 70% done. And if it goes into visual effects, we can pull the trigger and finish the asset and have it ready for a final visual effect shot in usually 2 weeks. which normally, if it's a visual effects house where they're just getting a still and they have to build it, they have to figure out what the textures are, what the look is. And fortunately at Aaron Sim's company, since we are early on in the process, we are always thinking that our designs will be used as an asset in visual effects, and we call that sketch to screen.
Awesome.
Does anybody have any questions? No? Well,
Make our jobs easier.
No, seriously, makes our job easier. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Once again, Nuke Studio does help us stay efficient. We appreciate it of the tools that it does to allow us to move forward and keep nimble and quick being in this time frame of being in this area of Los Angeles.